Well, your electric bill went up this year, and you didn't even use more power. Well, both can be true at once, and it's not a feeling. The Federal Energy Information Administration publishes electric rates every month. Most coverage goes one of two ways: unplug things, or the grid is collapsing and nothing can be done. I'll do a third thing and show you the line where it happens. Well, New York paused its biggest data center bill for up to a year while it works out who pays. There's a clock on that decision. Two governments moved in the same 9 days of July, and only one attached a consequence. So by the end, you'll know which. It sits on a line that most people never read, and you'll know which line to look at and why it's moving, and which of the two government actions has teeth. Hi, I'm Han Brown. I'm the creator of the AI brain and the Medicare brain. I talk about where AI, policy, and aging collide, and this is where it happens. So because most of us read that bill the same way. So the number at the bottom is the report card. It went up, so nobody left the light on, or the air conditioner ran too long, or the grandkids were over for a week. That's a fair way to read a bill. It's just getting to be the wrong one. Here's what actually is going on. Your bill is built out of two halves, and only one of them has anything to do with you. The other half is your share of the equipment that carries power to the house. And that half is getting pushed up right now by something being built miles away. So when that half goes up, the useful question stops being, what did I do? It becomes, who paid for this? Well, let's start with the bill itself, because not much else makes sense until this part does. Pull one out, paper or the app, whichever that you got, and past the total, you find two categories. One is called supply, sometimes generation. The other is called delivery, sometimes distribution. Different utilities use different words, but every bill has both. Supply is the easy one. That's the electricity you actually use, measured in kilowatt hours times the rate. Run the dryer more and it goes up. Leave town for 2 weeks and it goes down. So that's the half that's about you. Delivery is the other one. And that's the one worth understanding. Delivery isn't electricity at all. It's the cost of the system that brought the electricity to your door. It's the poles on your street, the wires strung between them, the substations, the transformers, and the towers running out across the countryside. Well, all of it has to be built, maintained, replaced, and eventually made bigger. And the cost of doing that gets split among everybody connected to it. Well, think about what that means. If your utility spends $400 million upgrading transmission this year, $100 million doesn't show up on the supply half of anybody's bill. It generally shows up on delivery, and it shows up there for roughly every customer on that system, whether they use more electricity or not. So here's a consequence, and it's a thing to walk away with. You can use less power this month than last month, get a lower bill supply charge for it, and still see a higher total. That's because the delivery half moved. And the delivery half isn't measuring anybody's behavior. It's measuring what the system had to spend. Well, it's not a scam and nobody's hiding it. It's printed right there. But it's printed in a spot most of us quit reading years ago because we learned to look at the total and nothing else. So now, fair question. Hasn't delivery always been part of the bill? Well, it has. And poles and wires have always cost money. What's changing is how fast that cost is growing and what is driving it. For most of the last few decades, grid spending was maintenance. It was replacing what wore out and handling a little more demand as houses got bigger and appliances piled up. Steady, predictable, and not dramatic. Well, what's happening now is a different kind, not just in size. And you can already see it in one state, in New York. The average home paid 26.69 cents for a kilowatt hour in May of 2025. 1 year later, the same average home paid 29.93. That's about 3 cents more on every single unit of power. and those come from the Energy Information Administration Electrical Power Monthly, Table 5.6a, which is the table every utility and every reporter is reading from, not an estimate from a group with a side to argue. So now let me put you somewhere on that map, because a number on its own does not tell you much. According to the Energy Information Administration, the average American home paid a little over 18 cents in that same month. A New York home paid almost 30. So New York runs about 60% above average. And if you live nearly anywhere else, your own rate is well below New York's. Put your last bill next to 18 cents and you'll see where you stand, which is why the level is not really the point. The direction is. New York is where the show is up first and hardest, but the thing pushing it is not a New York thing. So now 3 cents sounds like nothing, but run it across a year of ordinary use and it stops sounding like nothing. If your use is anywhere near typical, that's real money by December. And you're not an outlier here, and neither is your bill, because this is the average household arithmetic. So what's getting plugged in? Well, data center is a building full of computers. Physically, that's all it is. Just rows of machines in a warehouse running around the clock, plus the cooling that keeps them from cooking themselves. What's changed is how many are going up and how much each one pulls. The wave is being built for artificial intelligence, and the machines that train and run those models draw a lot more power than the ones quietly holding your photographs. So now I could give you an industry estimate for what adds up to, but I'd rather give you the government's. The Department of Energy asked Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory to measure it. What came back is a report from 2024 called the United States Data Center Energy Usage Report. It's a study everybody is quoting right now, including the people who disagree loudly about what it means. Almost every article leans on this one report and rarely names it. The Department of Energy asked for it. In 2023, data centers use about 4.4% of all the electricity used in the United States. Well, let me turn that into a real number instead of a percentage. In 2014, the total was 58 terawatts hours. By 2023, it was 176. It roughly tripled in 9 years. Is a terawatt hour a lot? Well, one of them is about what 90,000 American homes use in a year. 90,000 typical homes, yours among them. And that same report looks ahead. By 2028, it's projecting data centers land somewhere between 6.7 and 12% of all the electricity in this country. Well, that range is wide, and a wide range usually means somebody's guessing. Most coverage picks one end of that range and reports it as a number. Well, here's honest instead of sloppy. Nobody knows how many announced projects get built, how fast or how efficient the next chips turn out to be. So the report gives you a floor and a ceiling, not one number. To set that beside something you already know, every home in America, all of them together, uses a little under 40% of the country's electricity. So at the top of that range, data centers alone would be drawing about a third of what every household in the country uses combined. So look at that floor. 6.7 is still a big jump from 4.4. Even the careful end of the government's own estimate says this grows. So now put the two pieces together. More load has to be carried. Carrying more load usually means more transmissions, more substations, more generating capacity, more of everything physical. Well, that's grid build-out. And grid build-out is a delivery cost, which means the cost of hooking up a building full of computers doesn't land on that building bill alone. It lands, at least partly, on the delivery half of the every bill on the same grid. And there's a whole problem in one sentence. The people who benefit from the building aren't automatically the people who pay for the grid it needs. Almost everybody agrees that's a problem. Utilities agree. The data center companies say it out loud. Both parties say it. The argument isn't over whether somebody should pay. It's over what happens if they don't. Which brings us to two documents written 9 days apart. On July 14 of 2026, the Office of Governor Kathy Hochul published an executive order creating the first statewide direction on new hyperscale data centers in the country. A pause of up to a year on building the biggest ones. That's the clock I told you about at the start. It runs out in July of 2027. Her reason is worth hearing in her own words. She said data center development, and I'm quoting here, threatens to hike up utility bills, deplete our natural resources, and create uncertainty for New Yorkers. Well, that's a sitting governor putting on a record that this can raise your bill. But the pause isn't the important part. What matters is what the state does during it. The governor directed the Department of Public Service to open a proceeding that would require data centers to either pay more for their energy or supply their own. And the state is running an environmental review before any new permits go out. So what did New York actually put on paper? A condition. Build here, and here's what you've got to do. Don't do it, you don't build. 9 days later, on July 23rd, the White House expanded something it calls a ratepayer protection pledge. The numbers on it are big. More than 200 additional utilities, developers, cooperatives, and states signed on. The White House says the pledge now covers 80% of all of the power delivered to American homes and businesses and protects 223 million Americans when a data center is built near them. That is a little over 3/4 of the country, so this is not some niche arrangement. Most people watching this are inside that 80%, you and I included. So read that condition carefully, though. It is protection if a project lands near you, not a promise attached to your bill. Most coverage of this went one of two ways, a win or a whitewash, depending on who was doing the covering. Well, it is neither. The principle inside it is the right one. Large data centers operators, not ratepayers, pay for the electricity and the infrastructure their projects need. Some of what it points at is real. In Michigan, agreements between the utility and two tech companies are projected to produce billions of customer savings, with those companies covering their own energy and capacity costs. So both documents land in roughly the same place. Somebody other than your household ought to pay for this. Well, where do you part ways? And this is the point of the whole video. New York wrote a rule. Washington collected signatures. The rule generally says what happens if you don't comply. A pledge says what you intend to do. Well, those are different kinds of things, and the difference isn't a technicality. So I'm not telling you the pledge is worthless. Well, 200 signatures is real commitment, and those Michigan savings are real dollars. Pledges do get kept for reputation, for regulatory goodwill, and for plain self-interest. But a pledge holds because the signer chooses to keep it. A rule holds whether they choose to or not. And when it's your bill on the line, that's the only difference that matters. So when you hear your state or your utility sign the pledge, the useful question isn't whether they sign, it's what happens to them if they don't keep it. And in most places, as far as I can find, the answer right now is nothing. So what do you do with all this? Well, three things. And the whole set takes about 10 minutes. First, if you only do one, do this one. Get your last two electric bills side by side. Find the delivery line on each, not the total, and see whether it moved. The line is your early warning. It moves before the total tells a clear story. And once you know where it sits, you won't lose track of it again. So I'm not going to tell you whether to share your delivery line should be, because that varies by state and by utility, and I would only be guessing at yours. What matters is not the size of it today. It's whether that one line is bigger than it was last year, and by how much. So that's a number that tells you which half is doing the work. Second, find out whether your utility signed the pledge. The White House release lists the signers by name. If yours is on it, that's a public commitment you can point at later. Third, and hardly anybody does this one, find your state's utility regulator. Most states call it the Public Service Commission or the Public Utilities Commission. Search that plus your state's name. When a utility asks permission to raise your rates, that body runs a public comment period, and comments from actual customers go into official record. The Energy Information Administration posts your state's average rate every month, so you can see whether what you are being charged is in line with everybody else. So now, what if the website is hard to use? Well, some of them genuinely are. There's a second way. Call your utility customer line and ask for a docket number of any pending rate case. They'll give it to you. And then you search that number on the commission site. What comes back is a schedule, not an answer. Rate cases run for months, so this isn't something you check once and settle. It's something you now know and how to watch. So where does all this land? Your bill has two halves. One answers to you, and one answers to what the system had to build. And the building happening right now is on a scale the grid hasn't seen in a long time. Both governments looked at that and agreed the people building it should pay for it. One of them attached a consequence to that, and the other collected signatures for that. That's not a reason to be scared. It's not a reason to be angry. It's a reason to know which line to read and who decides what goes on it. So before you go, one question, and you can answer it from your own bill. Have you read your delivery charge lately? Not the total, that one line. Tell me in the comments. I'm Han Brown, and this is the Han Brown Show. Well, thanks for tuning in. And when the next Medicare brain and the Social Security brain pieces are ready, I'll send them to you. So sign up below for my newsletter. And the next one is about a different bill that moves for reasons that are not about you either. Your Medicare drug premium. I'll see you there.